The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Hello, welcome to Staring Into the Abyss. I'm your host, Richard Gerlach. With me, as always, is Michael Patrick Hicks.
Hello.
Matt Brandenburg.
What's up, people?
And special guest, the author of Mountainhead and Sink, John Lees.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on. Always love talking about horror any chance I get.
It's our pleasure to have you. And I can speak for myself and Matt that we're both really big fans of your work, so it's an honor to have you on the podcast.
Well, that's great to know. Thanks. Good to know someone's buying it.
That is always a good sign.
No refunds.
No refunds.
You get it, you get it. You're stuck with it.
It's good, though. People should get it. I enjoyed it a ton.
Yeah, I've read Hotell, Mountainhead, and the 2 volumes of Sink you have out, and I loved all of them. So,
well, thank you very much. Like I say, I'm fond of all of those books. They're all like my dysfunctional weird babies in different ways. So it's good to know that folk are still enjoying them and picking up on them.
Oh man, yeah, and and we'll get into the discussion, but I appreciate the book you picked, and I feel like the ending of the Worm story and a little bit of the ending of the Mountainhead. I was like, oh, I can kind of see a little similarity here. And like literally the last panel of Mountainhead I should be pointing at.
Yeah.
No spoilers.
Yeah, right.
Like, all these new readers going, this Mountainhead sounds really interesting. And you're like, yeah, it's really great at the very end when this happens.
The very last panel. Well, this episode will be talking about the graphic novel Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. I was going to say graphic book. It's 5 short graphic stories with some really beautiful artwork. I really enjoyed this a lot. But before we get into discussing Through the Woods, we kind of like to give a recommendation of media we consumed last week, like horror. Sometimes we've been gushing about WandaVision for the last few episodes, so that might continue a bit today.
Just a bit.
Just a bit. Before we get going, though, with all those, I finally saw Saint Maud.
Oh.
And
yes.
I loved it.
Did you?
Yeah, it was really good.
I'm intrigued by this movie.
It's fucking wild.
Yeah.
It's similar to like the art house horror that's been happening recently, where you have a movie that's not an overt horror movie. Like, it's more of a character study that has a horror background that kind of plays more and adds more as it builds. So it's about a woman who, before the movie starts, she's working as a nurse, and her patient died when she was giving CPR, which led her to turn to God to try to repent for her sins, because she believed her sins led to the death of this person. And now she's like a newly super devout Roman Catholic who is a hospice nurse who is sent to live with her new patient who was a dancer, who's now dying of a really like attacking cancer. And she takes it in her mind that God has chosen her to save this woman to make sure she gets into heaven. And it kind of goes out from there.
Interesting.
It's intense.
Now, I'm trying to remember, because I feel like this was supposed to come out last year, right?
Yes.
And then because of COVID, it kind of got pushed back.
Yeah. I saw it at the Glasgow Film at the Glasgow Fright Fest back in March of first week of March in 2020, and back then it was supposed to be like this was like an early screening just ahead of it getting a wide release, and then like it never got its wide release because of COVID. Because COVID was like everything got locked down like 1 week after the festival was over. So
What did you think of the movie,
The
John?
last film I ever saw in the cinema was some terrible Sean Ashmore serial killer movie that was part of Glasgow Flight Fest.
Oh man, yeah.
What did you think about Saint Maud?
It's funny because at the time when I saw it, I thought it was quite good, but it kind of left me a little cold. But at the time, like since all the reviews have came out, everyone's saying this is really amazing, and I'm thinking maybe I just wasn't in the right mood for it. Maybe I need to revisit it because, I just thought that I didn't like it. I admired a lot of the craft that was going on in it. And I think that Jennifer Hale, Elizabeth Bennet herself from Pride and Prejudice, she plays the dying woman, and I love Jennifer Hale. I've always loved Jennifer Hale, so I'm always happy to see her get work, which seems to be annoyingly rare. So I enjoyed the performances. I thought the acting was really good. Weirdly enough, by sheer coincidence, about a week before I saw Saint Maud, I saw Horse Girl on Netflix, starring as Alison Brie, and weirdly enough, the two of those movies are weirdly companion pieces in terms of about women's catastrophic mental collapses, pretty much, but whereas Horse Girl had the whole jarring thing of seeming quite upbeat, and Alison Brie plays this bubbly, likable, kind of happy character, and then when things start going horribly awry, it's more jarring because you have the clash of moods, in the light and dark and balance. Saint Maud is just oppressively grim and dark right from the beginning, so almost feels by the time it's 2 hours, by the time you've finished it, you're oh, thank God! Not because it's bad, or because you're bored, but just because you've been that wound up for the whole 2 hours. Not even in a horror way, just in an uncomfortable feeling the world is screwed.
Yeah.
And people are we're doomed and we deserve to be doomed. I remember just feeling really, really grim and really kind of sobering. So yeah, like I say, I remember not loving it, but maybe it just because it was so dark, maybe I just wasn't in the right mood for it. Maybe a reappraisal is in order.
Yeah, I had to prepare to watch it because I knew it was going to be a dark and grim movie, so I had to get myself in that mindset. It does have, there's no moments of levity in the movie, but one part that made me laugh is in the credits. Where, remember the scene where she sees the cockroach at her apartment?
Yeah.
The
cockroach has a credit in the credits. And it says cockroach, and then the cockroach is Nancy.
It's amazing.
But no, I thought it was really good. Here in the States, you can only watch it on a channel called Epix.
Ugh.
But that's how I got to see it.
I got a real quick question for you about the cockroach.
What about cockroach, Mike?
Did Andy Serkis play the cockroach?
Andy Serkis did not play the cockroach.
Oh, that's a shame.
He could play a damn good cockroach, though.
I bet he could. He can play Gollum. He plays apes. He could do a cockroach.
That's going to go to BuzzFeed and pitch the top 20 best cockroach performances in the cinema.
He would be up there.
He would be up there. But
them all.
But that's it for Saint Maud. I definitely say check it out if you're in the mood for something grim, dark, and oppressive. It's not an upbeat movie at all. But Mike, what about you?
Well, not very grim and oppressive was Stephen King's Later.
Oh.
Ooh.
A supernatural coming-of-age crime story that is a bit like The Sixth Sense, because this is a kid who can see dead people.
Oh, of course. Why am I not surprised?
But King does a pretty good job of making it his own. He doesn't... Beyond that, it's not as comparable to The Sixth Sense beyond that basic premise, but he does a pretty good job of turning it into a very own Stephen King crime story for the publisher Hard Case Crime. So this is following with his works of like Joyland and
that other one.
Yeah,
Colorado Kid.
Sure.
And continuing on that kind of crime trend that he's started really kind of digging into lately, I think, with the Bill Hodges trilogy and The Outsider. And we'll be continuing with his summer release of Billy Summers about a hitman who only kills bad guys. But in this one, this is following kind of a life story. It starts off, we get introduced to Jamie Conklin when he is 6 years old, and he and his mom are returning home to their apartment building. And they stop to have a conversation with the neighbors, and they find out that the guy that lives next door, his wife just died. But meanwhile, Jamie is standing there talking to the dead wife. And that's how we start to learn that there's something a little wrong with this kid.
Is the kid's dad alcoholic writer by chance?
His father is a mystery. The dad has been out of the picture for quite some time. He doesn't know who his father is.
That makes sense. He's trapped in a hotel.
They might be.
Does the kid have a man who follows him around the entire story to help him, only to realize that man is indeed a ghost by the end of the story?
No, he knows
Is it
damn
called
well.
Bruce Willis? Oh, he's called Luce Billis.
Yeah, right. John McClane.
He does end up being haunted by a serial killer.
The dead serial killer?
Yes.
Okay. Is he still killing?
No, but he is trying to drive the boy insane.
I see.
So he's doing some mind games from beyond the grave. He is a serial bomber, and so there's another bomb out there that he is trying to help the cop find. The cop was involved with his mother and learned about Jamie's secrets. And, I don't want to give that part away, but it's good. There are some neat little twists in this that I will say kind of King establishes some of the rules of what Jamie Conklin's powers and abilities are and how the dead interact, and then kind of throws some of that stuff out the window. And it gets pretty interesting from there. But it does have that very kind of comfortable familiarity to it. It does recall The Shining. There are a little bit of nods to It. So constant readers will pick up on these things pretty quickly. But mostly it's just a fun, comfortable story to sink into.
Nice.
Awesome. I have it on pre-order, so I'm excited to get it when it comes.
Yeah, I had fun with it. It was a really brisk read. I got through this in a couple days. It's not very long at all. I think it's like 250 pages, so it moves pretty quickly.
Awesome. Matt, what about you?
All right. So I have a couple things. I'm trying to decide what to bust into first. I don't know. Do we want to go into WandaVision talk? Wait, I'll save that. All right. Last week. By
the time this airs, it'll be long finished, so you don't have to worry about spoilers.
Exactly.
Yeah. We're talking full spoilers anyway, because we know it's going to be finished by the time it comes out.
Last week, I watched a little movie called Carousel, if you remember, about a killer carousel unicorn that comes to life and murders people.
I saw they tweeted you that they're making a sequel.
Yeah, the writer-director said that they are working on it in April, and I'm very excited.
Maybe they'll give you a cameo.
Man, that would be awesome. I would 100% be down for that. If he needs somebody, I'm there. Well, I watched the prototype for this movie called Llamagedon.
I've seen Llamagedon.
Okay, so I had it until last night, and after watching it, it's so similar to Carousel except Carousel does everything better than Llamagedon. So,
for me, the first bit wrong is that they went for Lamapocalypse and not Llamagedon, which sounds much. Yeah.
Maybe it is called Llamagedon. I don't know what it's called. I kept goofing it up when I was trying to.
Apocalypse is just a really fun name, though.
But man, it's only an hour long, just like Carousel is only an hour long, but this one, you can kind of feel it. It definitely feels a lot longer than an hour, and it's just a little bit more boring. There's not enough graphic effects. The llama basically just shoots people with his laser eyes, and people blow up in bad CGI explosions.
You're jaded when you're just like, the llama just shoots people with his laser eyes.
Well, when you see Carousel and this horse unicorn thing can kill people with machetes and ninja stars and like a little flamingo yard ornament, you're like, oh, laser beams are just nothing.
So what you're saying is they're llamas with frickin' laser beams on their head.
Yes. It's like the low rent Dr. Evil plot. But it's very entertaining. Carousel is definitely the better of the two. I think Ghostwriters podcast, Mary Sangiovanni had talked about wishing the llama and Duke, the Carousel unicorn, would star in a movie together. And I would love that too. I almost could see it as a Godzilla versus Kong situation. But yes.
Right.
So if you had to choose, I would suggest Carousel over Llama Apocalypse or Llamagedon, whatever it's called. But I'll save WandaVision for our next go around.
Sure thing, John.
If we're talking about a horror theme of the past week, going back to Stephen King, I've actually been quite enjoying the new TV adaptation of The Stand. It seems like a lot of folk watched the first week, which was a pretty disastrous first episode, and just like pieced out after that. And I can understand, because I was really frustrated with the first episode. I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with The Stand, the novel, but it's like maybe my all-time favorite book, and it's basically about this massive, like, pandemic that wipes out most of the world's population, and then like the new society that emerges in its wake, and like these two rival factions, like the kind of like good people, like, that have gathered around Boulder in Colorado, and this elderly lady called Mother Abigail, and then like the dark side, like in Las Vegas, where this demonic entity called Randall Flagg is like assembling his followers. And for me, like, you couldn't ask for a more timely thing to be on TV right now than like an adaptation of The Stand. And it felt like there was such an open goal that they missed, because for me, like, in the book, one of the best parts of the book is the whole extended opening sequence where you're watching this regular human dramas kind of unfolding, and you're getting invested in these characters while in the background this disease is slowly spreading. And the clever thing is that you don't know what characters are immune and what characters aren't at first. Like, so there's characters that you kind of grow attached to, then they die of the virus, then there's other people who seem like supporting characters who kind of emerge because they survived. And like, for me, that's the best part of like one of the best parts of the book, and the TV series kind of totally blitzes that by skipping the pandemic part entirely, where pretty much it starts like where they've already like founded a new society, and you only see like the pandemic and little like snippet flashbacks like Lost, and it's like so it feels like they've like hobbled themselves by like removing a massive part of the book, and like some of the best parts of the book. Like, for those of you who are familiar with The Stand, like the Lincoln Tunnel section is not in this adaptation. It's been taken out entirely, which is like the best scene in the book. And so a lot of folk were really frustrated by that. Like, the first couple episodes are lots of like Lost style like flashbacks, jumping forward and flashbacks within a flashback, and it's all out of order, and it just really hurts their investment in these characters. But once you get past those first couple of weeks, and it settles down a little bit, it's became a rock solid adaptation of the second half of the book. And like the casting is spot on, the performances are really good, the production values are top notch. But my mental image of Randall Flagg has always been that guy with his fucking mullet that was in the terrible 90s.
Yes. I love the 90s adaptation of The Stand.
But like Alexander Skarsgård is amazing as Randall Flagg, and he instantly becomes like the Randall Flagg. Like, I remember Matthew McConaughey was supposed to play Randall Flagg until he left to play the same character in the adaptation of The Dark Tower. But like Alexander Skarsgård just leaves him in the dust. He's like proper scary and like has this real like presence, and like all the cast are really good. And like like I say, if you're at all a fan of The Stand or of Stephen King, swallow your disappointment for the first couple episodes and accept it's not the book. But once you kind of see it as its own thing, it's actually been very good. So I'd definitely say it's worth checking out. And other than that, the only other horror thing I've watched recently is last night I watched Anna and the Apocalypse on Netflix, and actually
that's a fun one.
Like for me, because I'd heard about it, it's like a Christmas movie musical, which is also a zombie movie. So like it starts off like High School Musical, and it's all the kind of like happy sing song stuff going on, and I assumed, based on that premise of it's a musical horror comedy with zombies in it, it'd be kind of like your PG-13 bloodless, tame comedy zombies, but no, like it's actually the horror stuff's actually properly vicious. You see like a baby getting eaten in its pram, and stuff like that. And it's and it pulls no punches with likable characters just get ruthlessly killed off. So yeah, it was a real pleasant surprise managing to succeed both as a silly cheesy High School Musical riff and as a proper genuine actual zombie movie. So yeah, and also it's Scottish as well, a Scottish company, so I'm predisposed towards liking it. So yeah, that gets my recommendation as well.
The guy who plays the headmaster is such a fucking asshole.
Yeah, the great Paul Kay, a British comedy royalty, but yeah, he was great in it. He
was good. You love to hate him in that movie.
The musical number they had.
It was a good musical number, not gonna lie. In the States, you can actually watch that movie on Hulu. It's not on Netflix for us here, though, but I also recommend it. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Well, I have been on a manga kick these last couple weeks, and for some reason. So before I get into my manga thing, I will say I have started my first splatter western.
Nice.
I'm reading Red Station by Kenzie Jennings.
Excellent.
Which is really fun so far. I'm going to get back to that, hopefully finish it by tomorrow. But ever since COVID lockdown happened, I've kind of gravitated towards manga and comics for some reason. They hold my attention more right now. And I decided to take the plunge and read Pluto by Urasawa. It's one of the best things I've read in any medium.
Huh.
It's not a horror. There's an old manga and anime called Astro Boy that I think most people kind of know. And there's an arc in Astro Boy, I think it's called the greatest robot on Earth, or the strongest robot on Earth. And it's one of the more famous arcs of the original manga. And this is Urasawa, he takes that, and instead of he retells it in a unique way where he turns it into a mystery thriller type story that builds into an incredible character study with an incredible villain arc and one of the best climaxes I've ever read in any medium. The story is pretty much, there are these 6 great robots that are the 6 strongest robots in the world, and they're being killed one by one. And there's a robot investigator who is going around trying to figure out why they're being killed, who's targeting them, and how they're being killed. And it builds into this really heavy thriller narrative it got me crying. I'm not gonna lie. It got those tears flowing.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I've read recently as well. Just in general, Naoki Urasawa has been my hero over the past year. I read 20th Century, or most of 20th Century Boys. The last volume's not come out yet, but I gorged myself in that and thought this is the best comic, or one of the best comics I've ever read in my life. And then I picked up Monster, and I was like, this is one of the best comics I've ever read in my life. And then I picked up Pluto and I was like, this is one of the best comics I've ever read in my life. It's a total, all killer, no filler so far for Urasawa. But yeah, Pluto was a fantastic book. And it's just this ongoing, emotional gut. The whole series essentially seems to be this cyclical thing of giving you these beautiful, melancholy, poignant, character studies of these like people who you really kind of become deeply invested in and go,
Yes.
I really hope these people have nothing but happiness and nothing terrible happens to them, and then something terrible happens to them, like, and like it's just it's like emotionally bruising. It is really topical as well. Like, this came out in 2003. And the whole plot revolves around like
war
this,
crimes.
like, the whole plot revolves around like weapons inspectors being sent into countries and coming up with like dubious reasons to go to war, like with countries over the robot stockpiles, and it is like and it's like so well done. It's so human, and it's just like some of the emotion just like really hits you in like the gut, and like I don't want to get into like spoilers too much, but like it's just some of like the revelations, like like, even trying to like explain it like gets a lump in your throat. Like the whole idea, like one of the robots gets like a major upgrade to become like one of the most advanced robots like that's ever lived, and one of the key things as part of this upgrade is that he's able to lie, and like robots have never been able to lie before. And the first thing he does with this ability to lie is he goes to like the grieving widow of like some dead robot and says like like don't believe what anybody says, like your husband did have a soul and he's out there and he's watching over you, and like believe me because robots don't lie.
Man.
And like. Or then the second thing he does is he goes to like somebody else and convinces them like to essentially sacrifice their lives for the greater good, and says, but don't worry, we'll see each other again someday. Like and it's just like it's just really kind of emotional, like and I just think it's like so well done. The characters are so well portrayed, like the art's magnificent. I would highly recommend. It's hard to find because some of the volumes are out of print, but it's getting an anime adaptation this year, so maybe that'll mean like new printing's coming. But yeah, like I'd highly recommend getting Pluto or 20th Century Boys or Monster. Basically anything with Naoki Urasawa's name on it, get it. It'll be worth it.
Yeah, and like even like it'll even if you're kind of turned off of I don't really know if I want to read an anime or a manga, like it's some of the best character work you'll read in any medium.
Yeah.
Like in 20th Century Boys, Friend has like one of the best villain arcs I've ever read. Johan in Monster, also like one of the best villains I've ever read.
Yeah.
And what like it's just
or
I
even
can't
like
praise this guy's work
Monster, even like Eva Heinemann, or Better Lunga, like they're both great villains and they're not even the main villain.
Yeah, like it's insane. This dude's an incredible talent. I need to read more of his stuff. But if you can get your hands on Pluto, I highly recommend it. It's out of print here as well. But the anime is coming out this year, so hopefully the manga gets reprinted soon. But I do highly recommend it.
That sounds
really just a classic comic. I mean, literally, like you could take like the North 2 section from Volume 1, and you could have released that as its own separate comic, and that alone would be one of the best comics ever made.
Oh man, the North 2 part was heavy. But it was good. I highly recommend Pluto. Mike, anything else from you?
No, that was it for me.
Matt, WandaVision time?
Yes, let's do WandaVision. All right. So we're on episode 7, I think, of
Episode
WandaVision?
7.
That is correct.
So they have 2 more?
Two more left.
2 more.
Have you seen episode 7, John?
I have.
Okay, good.
Yes.
We're in the end game now.
Yes, we
I've
are.
spent the past like 2 days just singing like it was Agatha all along.
Oh man, they reveal finally what people have been kind of saying since episode 1, which is that Agnes is Agatha, which in comic book world is
a Fantastic Four villain.
What?
She's a Fantastic Four villain in the comics.
Yes, and she's like tied to Wanda. She has usually has been kind of like helping her out with her magic in the past.
Yeah.
And yes, she they creep up into the little bit of the horror. I mean, just when Wanda is in her house and you get like the weird bug and you get the weird yo gabba gabba going. That was all amazing.
Hey, Matt.
Yes.
Since Yo Gabba Gabba is now part of the MCU, does that mean Mike Park is part of the MCU?
Yeah, I know, really. Are we going to get some Aquabats?
Yes.
I was just super envious of that basement. I wish I had that kind of space down there.
That was a pretty big basement.
At least you have a basement, Mike.
That's true.
They did a really good job of capturing Modern Family / Office.
Vision did the Jim Halpert look at the camera, so I was happy.
Yeah.
I love
Can I
like,
just say
Vision.
that, like, on Friday morning, before I watched the episode, I saw that John Krasinski was trending on Twitter, and I thought, oh my god, that spoiled it. John Krasinski, the rumours of him being Reed Richards are true, and he's going to show up in the episode. But no, he was trending because, like, Vision was doing the John Krasinski, like,
I love like Vision sitting in front of the truck just talking to the camera, and he's like, why am I doing this?
Yeah. Which was just perfect. I am a little disappointed that we didn't get a Fantastic Four like tie-in because Monica kept hinting at somebody, and then when you get to that person, you're just like
how? It wasn't anybody else even know.
I was like, what the hell? Oh man. But
I did say my disappointment is that I've been like secretly hoping for several weeks that like it would turn out that Catherine Hahn was secretly Dr. Octopus in this universe as well, but it didn't work out.
Oh man, that would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
But yes, I love that they finally made Monica Photon. I thought that
this series has been her origin story.
Yes.
Yep.
They even gave her the hero stance.
Yeah, that was badass when that happened.
But yeah, no, it was. I enjoyed it. I thought it was cool. I've seen some things referencing how they've been slowly hinting at Wanda being more and more depressed, and they were saying how because at the beginning she's like, last time on WandaVision, and like if you watch it, she like gets sadder and sadder every time she says it.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's a nice little touch that I didn't notice until now. And then I am interested to see kind of where they go with that, because it's interesting with Agnes, because it feels like there's got to be more to it than just her being evil. Like she's got to be working for somebody just through the way some of the questions that she was asking in previous episodes and everything like that.
Now, what my question is Agatha literally like involved in like, is she the one that set this up for Wanda, or one of the people that have set this up, or has like Wanda set this up herself, or has someone else set this up for Wanda and she's just kind of like wandered into this world as a saboteur that kind of like wreck it after the fact? That's what I'm interested in.
Yes.
That's
because like that's the question, is because like you get kind of all these references at how powerful Wanda is, but then it seemed so easy for Agnes just to work her way in and like basically control her. We don't know what she's doing at the very end, but putting that little purple magic into her. Yeah. It's like, yeah, who did this? And that's my question. And I'm really wondering if she's working with somebody, Agnes, and they kind of set up the director for S.W.O.R.D. probably as a bad guy. So did he do it? Did he do it just to get Vision alive? And then everything else is just kind of secondary. So I'm really hoping they stick to landing with 2 more episodes. There's no way they can't do any more TV kind of eras because they're pretty much caught up.
But up to date now, so it's going to have to take a different route now.
I think the next 2 episodes are going to be your kind of typical MCU fare.
Yeah, that's...
I don't know.
Especially...
They could make a complete left turn and end up being like The Shield.
They could do a community reference.
Vic Mackey on Agatha.
Yeah.
Like burning her face in the stove.
Yeah.
What if they go
Monica
Breaking Bad
comes down
on
and
us?
throws a grenade in her
just
car.
starts batting her.
Mike, what if they go Breaking Bad on us?
Yeah, they could. Oh, they're going to dissolve Agatha in a bathtub.
Vision being like, I am the one who knocks.
Yeah.
The one time they go car. Like, this isn't for all children. We're going a little dark right now.
This is for Sparky.
Oh, man.
And they gave us a mid-credit scene after weeks of putting 10-minute long credits. They finally give us mid-credits.
I know I have to go back and watch that. I saw it on Twitter and I thought, all these weeks I've thought, I'm not wasting any more time watching it. This one's going to be on. I've turned it off. And the 1 week I turned it off right at the start of the credits. So the 1 week was something. Yeah.
And it's actually an important mid-credit scene too.
Yeah, I know. I would have turned it off too, because we last week when we were watching it, we had a huge discussion about going through the credits, and my wife was like, just turn it off. And I'm like, you never know. And of course there wasn't one last week. And so this week we would have turned it off, but I did see a spoiler saying, oh, there's a mid-credit scene. So I was like, it's the one time we have to watch.
I warned my wife about it, so we're going to have to sit through the credits and see what this scene is. And then it's like 5 seconds long, and she looks at me, she goes, well, that didn't explain anything.
But, Mike, it's a cliffhanger to get you going into the next episode.
I understand that.
It was quite bold to put in the mid-credit scene someone where it's just Elizabeth Olsen sitting in front of the camera going, okay, here's what's going on, and it explains the whole plot. But don't tell anyone, don't tell those folk who turned off at the start of the credits. It's between us.
That'd be amazing. Oh man, so good. It was a good episode. I'm excited. I know by the time this comes out, y'all have seen it already, but I'm excited.
I'm excited too. It was really good. Do you have any more recommendations, John?
I think I've pretty much got through the stuff that I've consumed. Oh, I will say one more thing, because the news has just dropped that it's getting optioned for film. So I would say, if you've not been reading The Department of Truth, it's a fantastic comic, super scary, super timely. I'm not sure if you guys have talked about it already on the show, but it's basically the premise is, what if every conspiracy theory was real? Or basically the whole idea is we're in a world where truth is determined by how much people believe something to be true. So, which is meant, largely speaking, the world has largely been in order, where things have largely sorted themselves out. But in recent years, as conspiracy theories became, increasingly, taking a hold, and there's this group who's stoking these to kind of just unearth, upend the whole nature of reality. The first issue is about this group of shady billionaires who take this massive boat on an expedition to the edge of the world. We're expecting to find the end of the flat earth, and they find it, and the best issue so far was really grim. It's basically this grieving mother of school shooting who starts becoming obsessed and going down this rabbit hole of false flags and conspiracy message boards about how this child isn't really dead, they were an actor all along and things, and she invokes her dead child back to life,
Wow.
through following this stuff, and it's really creepy and really well done, and such a smart book. Martin Simmons is a great artist and a lovely guy who I've known for years. It's awesome seeing him succeed at such a high level, and it's James Tinney, the best thing he's written. So yeah, I definitely recommend checking that out. Get on before the movie comes out, and you can say you were cool.
It's the same guy who's writing Something's Killing the Children.
Yes.
Oh, I fucking love that comic so much.
Yes. That one's awesome.
Yep.
This sounds great, man. It's going to be.
Have to check this out.
That'll be an interesting movie because it's definitely hitting buttons on.
Oh yeah, it's really it's one of these things that makes you feel angry and because how the topical stuff it's hitting on, the real life people it's kind of commenting on, and then it really freaks you out and scares you, and it is proper scary with the ideas it raises and things and the implications, and yeah, just really good comics.
Oh man,
hell yeah!
Add that to the list now.
Let's add to my list too. Yeah. All right.
Volume 1, I think, has just came out or is just about to come out. So yeah, you should check it out, get caught up.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah, I need that book. I hope they have a special pandemic conspiracy issue.
Gosh.
Well, I think that's a good segue for us to bridge into Through the Woods.
Yes.
The graphic collection put out by Emily Carroll. Before we dive into these stories, John, why did you choose Through the Woods?
I absolutely love this comic, Through the Woods. For me, Emily Carroll is the queen of comics horror. I'd say that if I was talking about the absolute masters of the genre in the medium. It'd be like Junji Ito, this guy who had put in the top. Then, like, just below him would be Emily Carroll. And I remember I first became aware of her because she used to do like web comics, and one web comic which she made which really broke out big time was His Face All Red, which ends up being adapted into like one of the stories in Through the Woods. But in its original form, it was a vertical scrolling like web comic, which caused a bit of a sensation and went viral on social media. And it really terrified me and really freaked me out. And that ending, like, is one of like the all-time great endings, not just of like any horror, but any story. And I'm sure, like, if we were to go back and look at Hotell, the end of issue 3 of Hotell is basically just me doing my riff on like the ending of this. That last image is like stayed with me forever. It just gives me shudders just when I think about it. She's just such a great storyteller for getting under your skin and making you uncomfortable. So yeah, that stayed in my head for a long time. And then I think it was probably the better part of 10 years ago now, came the announcement that she'd picked up a book deal and she was getting like, His Face All Red plus a selection of original news stories put together in this book called Through the Woods. I just think it's a lovely collection. I'm a sucker, as you might know from like reading like Sink and Hotell, I'm a sucker for like the horror anthology format, like with short stories put together. And like so that this just feels like the kind of book version of that in terms of like the whole portmanteau of like separate stories, which kind of have a nice framing device bringing them all together. And I just think it's such a really, and the whole format of the book as well is just a great physical artifact to hold in your hands, like the texture of the cover, the hardback look. I revisit it every couple of years. Like, I'm not necessarily the biggest rereader of comics, but I've reread this several times. Whenever I'm working on something scary and I want like inspiration, like I always jump back into this just to kind of soak up its atmosphere. For me, it feels like it's like The Witch or Hereditary, in comics form. I just think it's great, chill and fair. And I'm sure we'll talk about the individual stories more once we get into it. But yeah, I love this comic, and I'm a big fan of Emily Carroll. Actually, while I'm talking on this podcast, I can look across my study and I can see on the wall an Emily Carroll commission of Bonnie Shaw, the villain of my comic, and then Emily Was Gone, which she drew for me, which is one of my proudest possessions. So yeah, like, fantastic book.
So I actually had not heard of this book before. It was my first time diving in. I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
I think it's because I'd also had read your work, and like I had just finished Hotell a few weeks ago, and the week before that I finished The Mountainhead. So like I was curious to see like how this would was an influence for you or something you like or would be inspiration for your work. And it's not what I expected, but the artwork was beautiful. And I enjoyed each of the stories. I had a fun time with it is the best way to describe it. If I was like 13, 14 years old, this would be like one of my favorite graphic stories. Like hands down. And it still has some really effective stuff. Like for me, we'll get into the stories soon, but for me my favorite was The Nesting Place. That was my favorite one.
Oh yeah, I love that one.
I've heard of Emily Carroll, but I've not heard of this one, so I was excited to pick it up. And I also have the paperback, and like you said, the cover is amazing.
The texture on the cover too is
No, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but it's good. But I really did enjoy it. It reminded me a lot of like reading scary stories to tell in the dark. They're these, when you get kind of down to it, they're these kind of simple stories, and you'll all have to explain the Grimm's fairy tale. I got some of them, but I didn't get all of them. And I know that's a lot of people were saying that the two kind of intersect. But for me, it kind of reminded me of that, scary stories to tell in the dark, where these beautiful illustrated stories that kind of have these fun little premises, and all of them kind of almost have like a little bit of a gotcha at the end, or a little something to leave you like, oh crap, these people aren't who they say they are. That's definitely the big theme I noticed through all of these is people are not who they say they are, or not who they act to be. One of them's dead, one of them is full of worms. It's like one of them says they
all full of worms.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, depending on what you eat, definitely. But one of them says they can see ghosts, but they can't. But the person who says they can't see ghosts can. So I kind of love that. Like, they all kind of have that little piece. And I think the artwork just elevates it because it's just this black and white and red. And then there's a little bit of other colors, but those are kind of the main three that are in this. And they, like, the text boxes are great. Just the way she either like puts a word in cursive or puts a word in red or in a certain way to kind of emphasize what somebody's saying is, just brilliant. And it just shows like the best part of this kind of medium of being able to not only use the word, but use art to kind of help enhance the story. So I had a lot of fun with it. Mike.
And
Mike? Oh, sorry, I was waiting for someone else to speak. Sorry.
Yeah, I was like, Mike?
Yeah, no, I had a fun time with it. I do think I'm a little bit aged out for it. It kind of struck me as being a little bit more for younger audiences. So I didn't quite connect with it that deeply. I think that my kids would love the hell out of it, though, especially the 3-year-old who likes all that goopy, gory stuff like I do. So I think the nesting place, when he's a bit older, will be a good one to connect with him.
The worms.
The worms. Love the worms. Yeah. That was some really great, creepy imagery in that one.
Those
teeth,
yeah. The check. With the teeth.
Yes.
Back and forth.
I love I was gonna say, like, I love the imagery in that one, and then also in the way she uses imagery to tell the story in, which one was it? Let me get to table of contents. And A Lady's Hands Are Cold. Yeah. With like the song and the ribbon that's going through the house to show us like where this voice is coming from. I thought that was really effective.
Yes.
I mean, like, that one especially really kind of seems to like foreground the whole vibe of the book. The whole vibe of the book feels like it's designed to be like some old lost book of like children's stories or dark fairy tales, and they all feel kind of timeless, like, they've been around for ages, and have that kind of like, nursery vibe almost, like, but yeah, that's one that it feels like most potent, I think.
Yeah, I definitely could see this as like an old, because it's kind of got that gothic kind of 18th century feel with all the characters. I mean, you kind of get a little bit more modern day with the worm one, but
the nesting place is like the only one that's set in present day, I think.
Yeah. But like definitely, yeah, it's crazy. Like, they all are kind of timeless stories, and like, it is kind of that fairy tale of like stay out of the woods, through the woods, but like, kind of watch out for the mysterious man that you're gonna find that's a neighbor. I love that story. That sets it up so perfectly. It's just this little story about like the dad leaving these 3 children while it's like winter time, and the kids like have fun, and then they start cleaning, and then they're just laying on the ground sleeping.
Yeah, and that's that. But what's the line where they say, like, on the 3rd day, a strange whatever took over us? I'm trying to find the line. Oh yeah, on the 3rd day we were struck by a strange lethargy and barely moved at all. Even that seems dead creepy.
Yes. And then that's when they start seeing like, somebody came and they have a great voice and they have a hat, and then of course it ends where he's like, well, the hat was different.
Did you all notice that? Did you all see the man in the hat hiding in the house when she's walking around?
Yes. I love that.
The bed.
Yeah, that was nice and creepy.
Yes, that was awesome.
Yeah, that's maybe my favourite story in the book. Like, I think it's just the whole pacing of it so well done. Like, that's a story I can imagine reading is like a scary story to your kid at night time to kind of like keep them awake once the lights are off.
And that one's definitely, it uses, I mean, like all of them kind of use the art, but this one especially, I mean, there's like a lot of white space and a tiny little character walking in it. And we know it's snow, so the white space works, but the usage of color and the red moon and the red, like everything. And then once she gets to the house, it's all dark. And I was just like, oh, it's so awesome, the artwork for that.
She is fantastic at creating an atmosphere with the color palette she's using here.
Yes.
Like the red and the blues, particularly, I think, in the second story, whose name I forget offhand. But it
that one
involves
is A Lady's Hands Are Cold.
yes, The Lady's Hands Are Cold, which was kind of a riff on the Green Ribbon story.
Yes.
I really liked how she did that one, but particularly the dialogue of was it that story with the song? And she's speaking in red.
Yes. That is
the imagery in that story too, when like they're eating like the bloody steak and there's the red smeared on the knife, and
that was just so gross and crazy.
And she did a really good job with that desiccated corpse at the end. I really liked that.
That was awesome. And it's an interesting like kind of story because again, that tie onto the Green Ribbon where it's the wrapped around the neck, and when you take it off, the lady's head falls off. In this one, she like ties it all together, and then the lady's like, well, now it's your turn to lose your hands. It's like you're the next one that's going to be like this, and I thought that was a nice little touch.
Yeah. And that was another really good twist on the people aren't who they seem to be. We find out the husband's an axe murderer and shot the partner's first wife.
Yeah.
With that one too is I like how the end panel is the nice way she ends it, how it ties back into the beginning. When in the beginning it's like there was a girl and there was a man, and there was the girl's father who said, "You will marry this man." And at the end it's there was a girl, there was a man, and there was a lady with cold hands. And it's all set up in the same panels and everything as well. That's really well done.
Yeah.
Just really well crafted. For me, I kind of feel like almost one of the highlights of the whole book for me is the foreword and afterward, like the introduction and conclusion. For me, like that little like 3-page sequence about like reading late at night and like the light from like the bed and like, you know, being terrified of the dark, like, you know, that lurks beyond your bed. Like for me, like that, even though like it's obviously about Emily herself, like for me that captured like my childhood of like reading stuff that was scaring myself senseless, and like, you know, or watching stuff that was scaring myself senseless, like, you know, and then being terrified like to get out of bed in case something grabbed me, and imagining monsters in the dark corners of my room. And like for me, I think like, you know, that's like really such a truth of like, you know, people who like write horror or draw horror or whatever, like, you know, that, or film horror. Like I think so much of us start as like scared kids ourselves, like, you know, in terms of like, you know, and we want to like make other people feel like scared the way we felt scared, like, you know, through stuff that scared us. And I think that was like, that really kind of captured that really like beautifully, I thought. And I love the end, like, you know, when it starts off like Little Red Riding Hood, but it's like, you know, traveling through the woods, and then but then like at the end, obviously when she arrives at her mother's house, and then you see when she gets into bed, it's the bed from the introduction with the little light, the little lamp in the corner. So like it's her again. And
oh my goodness, you're right. I didn't even notice that.
I thought that was a nice touch, and I love that bit at the end when it's like, oh, you must travel through those woods again and again, and you must be lucky to avoid the wolf every time, but the wolf only needs enough luck to find you once.
Yeah.
That was a great last ending.
Oh, it's so brilliant. Well, and I love to go to that intro is because it's like a perfect, almost telling you how to read the book, which is to read it at night with just a little light. You know, it's like this perfect little setup, because that's the best time to read this kind of scary stories like these, is in your bed in the dark, all alone.
Yeah. With a little nightlight.
Yes. To guy jump back to our spot, which is his face was all red. I'm trying to think if I feel like I had seen that when that webcomic came out, but I didn't remember all of it when I was reading this, and it's just such like such an awesome story.
It's just so creepy and ambiguous and like, you know, unsettling. And I think the fact that you don't really know what's going on, like, you know, doesn't really lay it all out for you. It just kind of leaves a lot of it kind of up in the air, is what makes it more like uneasy.
Yes, and I love like your main character. He's kind of like this weaselly guy who takes credit for his brother's killing of the evil beast, and like every time, you know, you can kind of see he kind of gets stepped on over his brother, and then this is his one chance to take it over. But even then, it's like everyone is mourning his brother and not celebrating him. I thought that was Oh, so good. And I love
there's a good sense of paranoia in that story too.
Yes, exactly. Especially like because the way it tells the story, it kind of jumps back and forth panel to panel. So you see the past and you see the present and you see the red. And then because the brother goes back, he wants to figure out why his brother is still alive. So you can kind of see all of that. And that's when he goes down this tunnel. Which again, like I was really interested in like what that was all about, like what was down there, because he just lays down there at the end.
Yeah, no, like for me, so that bit, like it's even like some of the little things that are unresolved, like when his brother comes back from the woods and then he looks outside at night and he sees him digging a hole at night time out in the garden, and like why won't he turn to look at me?
Yes.
Or even like when his brother comes back from the woods and he's like, but his coat wasn't torn.
Yes. And he gives the brother credit and everything like that. It was just so crazy. There's just so much little things happening. I love this story. It's such a good one.
Again, that last shot, just like even looking at it now, it still is just chilling for me.
Yeah. Because is that it? Is that him? Who is it? Who's down there?
Yeah. It's just really keeps me out.
It's that last image too when it turns to look at him and then just ends there and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. But
for me, like that's just like a pure primal terror of being like out down in the dark with something dead, and then the thing that's dead isn't dead. It's just like
and you honestly have no idea what the beast was. They say it was a wolf, but you don't know, and it's just like.
Yeah.
So there's a lot happening in this one. And this one, I feel like, well, this one and the other story has a little bit more color to it, which, I appreciate kind of because it's giving you like the real life colors and stuff like that. And then while the other ones are a little bit more stark coloring wise. But then anyway, My Friend Jana, I think was a really fun one just because it touches on the whole like medium thing and how it's all fake. And it's just a friend that's in the walls banging on things. But then you realize there is a ghost, which is just some amazing artwork of who this little ghost thing is.
I love like the red pulse. That's the ghost is like one of my favorite images in this.
Yes.
Yeah. And that last page reveal was just really well done.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Which just makes you wonder, like, how did she get the ghost and why did Jana get the ghost?
And it's a whole image of like, the ghost like holding Yvonne as well. And it's like, she's still my friend.
Yeah.
It's that line, like, when she come in, Yana comes to see Yvonne late at night and then she says, tell her to go away, it's late. And it's just that really creepy lettering, like the red text, tell her I'll come back.
Yeah.
Some night when she's rested, some night she's awake, I'll come back. And then it's because it's just not Yana that's speaking, it's the monster that's speaking there. I'll come back one night,
Oh man, it's a really great creepy ghost story. It just ticks all the boxes it needs to.
And the crazy, insane writing. There's like the 2 pages of the journal entry.
Yes.
I was trying to read it. There's some insanity in there, and it's awesome. I love that little touch to it. But yeah, it's a great story of just spookiness and being haunted. And then we'll get to the fun one, which is the worm one, nesting place. And I love that the intro is all about the mom telling them about monsters, but then saying like, the monsters aren't there. Don't worry about it. Especially shadows with teeth. Sorry.
Yeah. I love those teeth in the dark.
Yeah.
Oh man. Even the first, like when she gets to the new house and it focuses on like the teeth when they're eating food.
Yes. Because they set up that the monster has piano key teeth.
Yeah.
Lots of eating in this book.
Very decadent people with all their eating.
It's a fun little setup and like just meeting Belle and her brother. Was it Beauchamp something?
Yeah.
It's a nice slow setup of them like in the house reading, and then you get the fiance Rebecca, and the artwork is just so like could almost tell from the beginning because she's so wispy and kind of see through almost, and it's like oh man. she's got problems.
That's an understatement.
And I like this one too because like there's conversations happening around Belle, but you don't get to hear all of it. And it's a great way with the comics where like the word bubbles are half on the panel, half off the panel, and it's like
background noise to her.
Yeah, so I think that's a nice little touch. And then you get the eating and the creepy teeth and the sounds. There's a lot of sound in this one.
Tick, tick.
Lots of onomatopoeias.
Which is what made me think of like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, because you could almost imagine reading this one out loud and these are the noises you have to make. Oh my goodness. And like you get the hints of something weird happening in the woods, and that Rebecca had disappeared for 3 days. So you're like, something weird is happening.
Her in the cave.
Yes.
And then Belle falls into the cave.
I was trying to figure out what happened to the house lady, because like you hear the weird noises and then you hear the people kind of talking about it's not working. So like was the house lady in on the worm thing, or was Rebecca talking to the worms?
Well, I got was like, because when they're talking about the worms and they said they tried to use her skin, but it wasn't stretchy enough to hold them. Yeah. So I think they killed her.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she warns Mabel about the woods and staying out of there, and Mabel tried to go to her late one night.
Yeah, that's that shot when she's behind the door and she opens it.
When like she has like the blackened eyes and everything.
Yeah, she finds those leech marks on her forearm.
Yeah. God.
Then I think after that, it was like, okay, she's got to die now.
Yeah. She doesn't even say anything. She just stares at Belle.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And then of course we get the hint. Oh, she's gone. That's all. And then then finally Belle goes, and that's when she finds Rebecca talking to her children, which are a bunch of worms, and
inside her skin,
like straight out of Junji Ito drawings of worms coming out of her eyeballs and mouth.
So good.
It's that whole sequence where by panel her face is just shifting around, like, you know.
Yes.
And then her whole face opens up and it's just teeth without a face.
Yeah.
The nose up at the top.
That's such a good illustration.
Yes. And you're screaming at her brother because like the whole, like, she gets saved and now Belle's in her bed and the brother's like, oh, well, you know, I'll go get the doctor. I'll leave you with Rebecca. And she's like, no. And I was screaming that too. I'm like, no, wait, this is that scene. This is the scene in every movie where you're like, the bad person's going to be there. But then, you totally get the gross face just falling apart and turning into weird things, and the fingers growing long. And just the drawings, it reminded me a lot of Edward Gorey, of this sort of beautiful woman, but there's something clearly off about her.
Yeah. I've told some of my friends about this book, and I'm like, it's kind of like Brothers Grimm type of stories as told by Edward Gorey illustrations.
Yeah.
That's the best way to sell this book.
I mean, like the worms have teeth for heads. It's messed up. And then in an indictment to all cities, she describes the cities as polluted and terrible doctors that will take your babies apart.
That's such a great kind of like fairy tale resolution, though, where the child scares the monster into, like, you know, going.
They're going to dissect your kids and stick them in jars. This
and their kids are going to breathe in
city.
The unhealthy, polluted city air.
Their skin will turn brittle. Like, damn, that's taking some shots right there. But it totally is like that fairy tale, you know, Hansel and Gretel pushing the witch into the fire.
I love the part where it's like, after the doctor's thing, it's like, then you'll be alone, and the grief will crawl into you. It will burrow. It will find a nesting place. You'll lose them if you do this forever.
Yes, that was amazing. And it's just so perfect. And she's even like, well, fine, you can put your worms in me. What do I care? Because they're all going to die anyway.
We're going to go to the city.
Yeah.
I just loved that whole idea though, when because it really hit home that bit when like she's saying like, you know, you can't get away with this. No one will believe it's me. My friends at school, my family, they'll know something's wrong. They'll know it's not me. And the whole idea of like, you know, well, they won't care. You'll be so much better. Like you'll be happy. You won't be sullen and miserable. You'll be cheerful, and you know, you'll grow into like looking more attractive. So like, you know, folk will be happy that you've changed. They won't bother. Like I think that just really was a really nice touch.
Yeah, it was super creepy.
Part of this book, like, it's a total side tangent of the story, but the whole idea of like the worms taking over people's like bodies and like having babies inside their bodies and commandeering their like bodies as a vessel for themselves. It reminded me of a book I read a couple years ago, which was The Hamadophages by Stephen Kosinski.
Yeah, it's like me being the horror hound. I was like, yes, let's get these guys into the city. That's the book I want.
Like, have you guys read The Hamadophages?
No, I have not.
That's like this times 10.
Oh man, but yeah, I was wondering that too. I was like, oh, I would dig seeing them expand, especially like the dad, because so like the final scene of this, and we've been spoiling all of this, but the final scene is the dad has piano teeth, or the brother.
Or the brother.
Well, yeah, because I guess the hint is that like the worms left the Rebecca and took over the brother.
Yeah, he says something at the beginning about how a leech is just a friend you haven't made yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like, is that so? Was he full of worms from the beginning?
Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe
I
he's
think
his own
so.
wormy creature, like when he met Rebecca and they were wormy together.
Yes.
Yes.
But oh man, yeah, that was a great final like to leave you on. It's just like this creepy teeth, and you're just like, oh no, bad news.
This whole book had great like final panel stingers where it's like, oh, that was good.
Yes. Oh, it's a ton of fun. I really dig this. I really dug this comic, and you know, I did like we were saying, like I wasn't sure what to expect, and when I saw this, and I was like, oh, is this gonna be a lot? But it's perfect the way it is. So
it's what it needs to be, and like I think me being like not a teenager, I think if I was like 13, I would love everything about this book, or even like 10, 11.
Yeah.
I'd like love everything about this book.
Yeah. It's like just dangerous enough to be like, you know, feel kind of like, ooh, I'm reading the scary book.
Well,
and reading it as an adult, it kind of like gives you that feeling of like you said before, of like it kind of like throws you back to like was a kid like reading these type of stuff, like about like how are you afraid of the dark and stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah.
It had a big nostalgic feeling reading this book, which like added to my enjoyment of it.
There's some neat riffs on popular classic stories like Red Riding Hood and The Green Ribbon, especially, that I thought worked really well. I like what she does with the Red Riding Hood mythos in both the first and the very last story.
Yeah, that was fun. And, you know, I think it's just a neat, like, fun little thing. It would be cool to kind of see this animated. I think that would be really slick.
I kind of want to find the original webcomic that she did for this.
Yeah.
Because
I'm sure
I never...
It's still online.
It might still be. Who knows?
Yeah. I'm sure that, like, if you were to go to Emily Carroll on Twitter, I'm sure she has a web page which still has, like, you know, most of these archived.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Plus some other stories that she's done.
A couple years ago, I was super into, like, those vertical, like, web stories, like, webcomic things. Yes. But they're, like, translated Korean horror comics. You'd scroll through them, and then one point, like, the image begins to move, and there's, like, subtle animations that add to the creepiness.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Those were a lot of fun to go through.
But yeah, no, this is a good one, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
I'm really happy you guys enjoyed it. It would have been awkward if you're like, no, this was correct.
Like, oh, wow.
Oh, jeez. Thanks for choosing this one, John.
This will be the last episode of What's the Best. Well, they say we don't like horror anymore after reading this.
Oh man! But now I need to take a little time and gush about Mountainhead, because I read that this week, and I know we already went through this week's stuff, but especially after reading this too, like I said, there's definitely a little like hint there at the very end of Mountainhead that kind of ties, at least for me, the very end of The Nesting Place, which again kind of goes into you can't trust who people are, which I guess goes through the whole Mountainhead comic, because everyone is sort of maybe not everyone, but a lot of people are something else. I mean, just your intro with the guy that was lost in the woods, and when he comes back and is extremely creepy and smiley, I just love that.
Unconsciously, there's probably a little bit of like both his face all red, like, you know, he coming back from the woods after 3 days, you know, and like the resting place in that.
Yes, and he had a hole in a that they like had found. Oh man, yeah, it's totally
like,
in this.
I didn't realize this, but like, you know, looking back at all of my comics, I think all of my comics, or a lot of my comics, are all built around like terrifying things found in deep holes, like, you know, in the ground. Like Sink has a deep hole, like a little sinkhole. Like Mountainhead has like the big hole in the mountain. Hotell has like, you know,
has the crawl space hole,
a crawl space, but beyond that, there's also like a hint of like, you know, a deep hole under the crawl space and something deep under there. Like, you know, obviously that's like something that I keep on going back to.
Oh, it's awesome though. I devoured Mountainhead. The artwork is amazing in that.
Ryan Lee is a genius. For me, that was one of the main impetuses of starting Mountainhead, was wanting to work with Ryan and draw it and like write something that I knew Ryan's art style would be amazing for. And I think he found the perfect partner in Doug Garbark for colours. Like the two of them work brilliantly together. The book is just visually stunning. Every page is like a tableau, and obviously like a big nod to Sean Lee, the letterer as well, like, you know, who brings it all together, and it's like the Rock, like, you know, the heart of the team. So yeah, like it was just like a joy working with all of them. But my main grievance is that Doug Garbark doesn't have some kind of name like Lee or Lee's, because it would have been great, because it's like John Lee's, Ryan Lee, Sean Lee, then Doug Garbark.
I love
as we call him, Doug Lee Garbark.
Yes, that would have been amazing.
One thing I loved about the Mountainhead is the panel work in that book.
Yes.
Like the part when, what was it, the kid like rips out his eyes.
Yes.
And it's like that V panel with like everything going around it.
Yes. Oh man.
So much that panel layout was all Ryan though. Like, you know, like I'd write like, you know, close up of Abraham looking sad, you know, and then like, you know, I'd get this magnificent ornate, like, you know, tapestry, like, you know, in that.
Oh yeah, no, and then all the body horror, those monsters. Oh man, those are like nightmare-inducing creatures.
Funny enough, that made it such a hard book to pitch, because like right from the book, spoiler alert, if you've not read it, stop it, go buy the book, and then come back and listen. But like right from the beginning, that was a core to the premise of the book. The whole idea of like thinking you're reading one comic for 3 issues, it was always going to be 3 issues, and then at the end of the 3rd issue, like everything turns on its head and becomes like something insane. So like you think you're reading this kind of like small town mystery about this kid, you know, who has been like all living off the grid, like living his whole life looking over his shoulder, like living this nomadic life with his dad. Then it turns out his dad isn't his dad, and like, you know, he was kidnapped as a child, and and he's actually like, so he gets like reunited with his real parents who he can't remember, and sent back to his hometown which he can't remember. And you think the whole thing's going on about like, as you know, are things what they seem, was his, you know, mad crazy conspiracy theorist, like, you know, fake dad telling the truth. You know, you think it's going that route, then it turns out that has nothing to do with it, and it's actually a completely different story, and actually like it's a kind of covert remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but you've been distracted from that because of the perspective you've come in at from.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, totally. And exactly. I mean, like, you spend like the first half of the first book of Abraham with his dad, and his dad's all crazy, and I love
They're
that.
robbing houses.
Yes. And it's perfect because it's exactly what you said. It like sets you up to kind of like see that he learned from his fake dad all these like kind of conspiracy theories and how to kind of like live, like always be running, never be stationary and everything. And so it's kind of cool to see that it worked in a certain way where he wasn't like just being paranoid to be paranoid. There actually was something there.
Yeah. Paranoia, they're out to get you.
Yeah. And then to have I was kind of wondering when I was going through it with the fake dad, I was like, oh, he's gone, but then he keeps coming back, and especially when he meets that one guy to help him start the car, I was like, oh, they're gonna be buddies, and then oh wait, never mind, he's gonna kill him.
R.I.P. that guy.
Yeah, I was like, damn it.
Press F to pay respect.
Yes. Oh man, and I love you make the Mountain Man actually a good guy. I thought that was fun.
Yeah. One thing I like about your comics is like they get really fucked up. So it makes like the part of me who likes this really fucked up violence happy. But I also love like your humor, your sense of humor that you kind of put within your comics as well.
Yes.
Yeah, like I like to say, I'm I'm less a horror writer than a frustrated rom-com writer. So, like, I do have lots of light-hearted bits and things. If I can, I like to kind of balance things out. I think like a lot of it when we're talking about Saint Mob, and I was saying kind of a bit overwhelming when everything's all grims. You have to have a little bit of humor, and also I think that for me, I've talked about this before, but I think that just like the best comedy is like 1 degree off of being terrifying sometimes, I think some of the best horror is just a notch away from being hilarious. So I think it's because they both exist in these heightened planes. An example I always give is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The end of that bit when it's like Grandpa and he's like hitting her on the head with a hammer and the hand shaking, people like look at me funny when I say I laughed my ass off when I was watching that. And it's like a nervous laugh because it's horrifying, but it's also kind of funny as well. And I've definitely tried to capture that quality in my work where if something's really horrifying, putting a little bit in there just to kind of saying it's okay to laugh, even the bit you were talking about when the kid pulls his eyes out and turns into this horrific monster. On the same page you have that little beat when the guy's like, the fuck,
I don't know, one panel I love from your comics was in Sync, the fucking Tories.
That has became. I'm so happy that's became a meme that every single time the Tories do something awful, which in the UK is every second day, like somebody posts the picture of Kieran in his gimp mask, and little panties, saying fucking Tories. That for me is probably that's still my favourite issue of Sync, maybe my favourite comic that I've had published. And I think why I like it so much is that for all the violence, for me I like that it's quite in some ways for all the violence and all the crazy sort of sex stuff that's going on, it's kind of a very earnest story about two people who are basically nice people who have a happy ending, so it's a bit of an upbeat kind of palate cleanser for the world of Sync.
Yeah, because Sync is pretty fucked up, especially those clowns.
Yeah. As soon as I always keep on coming back to clowns, but yeah.
Oh, clowns.
Well, as I say, on that note, I should bring up that there is going to be more Sync coming. I know there was people keep on saying, "Oh, is Sync finished now?" But it's not finished. Volume 3 is all written, and the ideal plan would have been coming out or would have been starting to come out last year, but thanks to the pandemic screwing everything up and the whole schedule being thrown off, that never happened. But the plan is it's been announced. Yes, I think it's been announced. I think it's okay to say that Dig is going to be an original graphic novel, a 60-something page, 64 pages original graphic novel telling like the backstory of Mr. Dig and how he came to be the way he is, like, you know, and it's a really fun story that kind of we got to tell, which kind of like, because it's not part of the main Sync series, we get to like break some of the rules that we normally, you know, don't like, because like normally like in Sync I don't like to like set stories outside of Glasgow beyond like a single, like maybe a tiny little scene, but usually I like to keep the setting contained and like the time frame contained. But because like, you know, this is like as like its own kind of like self-contained thing to a degree, like it's an OGN, I get to break some of the rules, and like we do flashbacks to years in the past, and we travel the world pretty much, and like, you know, it's a really fun story. It really kind of like digs into, or no pun intended, digs into like the character of Mr. Dig. And then right immediately following like that, I imagine that's going to be going to Kickstarter at some point, maybe in the spring, late spring, early summer. Then once that's released, immediately afterwards we're going to be going right into like volume 3 of Sync, which is a lot of fun. Like, as I say, I really enjoy like this volume. I think it's, you know, some of the strongest issues I've written, and it's a little bit more narratively ambitious with how it kind of all links together. So yeah, if you enjoyed volume 1 and 2 of Sync, you've got more coming.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think
you should check it out. It's a really fun series, like an anthology, kind of pulp crime horror, all set in the location of Sink Hill, which is this nightmarish forgotten district of Glasgow where strange screwed up stuff happens.
It's really fucked up, but I love Sync. It's tons of fun to read.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to do that. It'll be my next comics.
Thank you so much for joining us today, John.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Like, I love sitting and talking comics with people and talking horror with people. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem.
No problem. Be sure definitely to check out John's comics, especially Mountainhead and Sync. Their Hotell's pretty great as well, but Mountainhead and Sync just stand out the most to me.
I love them all equally.
Can't pick favorites of your children.
They're like my little worm babies from the nesting place.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
She loves all those worm babies.
Indeed, she does. Next week we are.
To get my plugs in, you can. Sorry, also get my plugs in. You can find me on Patreon, patreon.com/John Lees, or you can sign up to my weekly newsletter at deepender.johnleescomics.com. That's deep-ender.johnleescomics.com. And also follow me on Twitter at johnlees927.
Nice.
Perfect. We'll be sure to add those links in the description of the podcast as well.
Thank you.
Next week, we're going to be talking about Negative Space by B.R. Yeager, which is going to be a not happy discussion.
No. So depressing.
That is a very fucking heavy book. But I'm looking forward to that discussion. Matt, where can listeners get in touch with you?
I am on Twitter at BrandenburgDM.
And Mike, what about you?
They can find me on Twitter at MikeH5856.
And you can follow me at Rudy53088. And be sure to give our podcast a follow at Into Staring. Be sure to leave reviews, spread our podcast around. We want to make sure that the abyss consumes all. And this is Richard Gerlach saying, keep staring.
Every person's story has something to teach us. How others view life, how obstacles are overcome, how joy is felt, how fears are faced, how love is expressed. The Matters of Faith podcast explores individual stories of people's lives and how faith plays a part. It may not be your story, but it may help shape yours.
The Matters of Faith podcast with Jay Wilburn is on Project Entertainment Network.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.